For Education Today, we're joined by two special guests to give us a lot of information about the most innovative, cutting-edge ways of learning applied to universities like Chulalongkorn University in Thailand today. So joining us today to tell us more about that is a pioneer behind this interactive learning space, Dr. Pattarachat Komon Gitti, the director of the Learning Innovation Center of Chulalongkorn University, and also Kun Sanya Setthapithiyakun, who's the president of Trinitech, and he's also the designer and developer of this active learning space. Sawadee. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
For the first question, though, asking about the trends in education. A lot of the trends in various schools follow technological developments, and so classrooms and also the curriculum are also developed accordingly. So how would you say describe that kind of simultaneous evolution of the classroom development and technological development?
Right. Actually, Chulalongkorn University sees the opportunity in improving through the technological innovations by driven through our center, the Learning Innovation Center. Okay, we actually approach this through multiple facets of technology, either the on-campus transformation or the online presence of our university. The place that we are around here today are called active learning space, which is one of the strategy that we are driven through. We're relying on some new technology in allowing students to share their content, to share their discussions, and facilitating all the learnings that could occur in many new forms. And therefore, of course, we see both things as the trend based on our new generations of the learners, as well as their regular competency in the new digital world. So therefore, this is the place that we see the opportunity to do so.
I see. In terms of technological developments and application to the classroom, what do you think is a trend in innovative learning in terms of technological developments in our period in time?
Right. Nowadays, I think we are focused to build up skill for students, especially the skill for 21st century. And in order to come up with those skills, we have to change the way we teach. And if we want to change the way we teach, we have to change the environment as well, because the environment will have an impact on the behavior, the learning behavior. So this room try to bring in all the technology that encourage students and teachers to discuss, to share.
Right,
the
knowledge.
Right.
I see.
Yes.
In terms of the purpose, the main purpose of these interactive classrooms is to promote learning through interaction.
Right.
And can you describe any other functions and purposes of the center?
All right. For the active learning space, we basically encourage the new way of learning, which is we refer to as active learning. Okay. Previously, what we are used to, especially in Thai society, are so-called passive learning. Okay, that you basically just sit and listen to the lecturer going on with their content. However, in the new world, we cannot survive by just having the student absorbing whatever the content giver are given to them. So therefore, we have to ask them to be able to innovate, right? So if the goal is set to be that they have to survive in the new world, to be innovator, so we have to ask them to practice that innovation aspect of their thinking. So we have to push the new way into active learning. So the active learning, to facilitate that, we need to have the proper space in order to allow them to have their own mind going around without relying or just believing in the teaching of the lecturer. So the space around here, we support the new way of learning, which would make the graduates become the innovator, as well as other aspects that we also support the teacher, that they have to change the way they teach. Instead of being just the content giver, now they have to be facilitator of how the learning aspect is going to be. So therefore, we also support the teacher through various forms of support, either by using some grants that we have. We support them by having trainings, proper trainings for them in order to use new technology, new tools, and as well as providing other ways of content, because without content, the students are still going around without knowing what are right or wrong. So therefore, there must be another way of providing content which could normally could be going through online.
I see. You talked about the importance of how an interactive learning space is for our current society and our current technological era. What has been the detriment of kind of passive learning, as you talked about, applied to our current, societal development, socio-developments?
As I mentioned before, once you are based on the passive learning, you become passive by nature. So you cannot be the innovator, because to be innovator, you have to be active. You have to be asking questions. You have to be, going through problems and trying to solve problem. And the problem must be figured out on your own. If you cannot ask questions properly, then you cannot be a proper innovator. Once you be just passive learner, then you only be trying to answer whatever questions are given to you from the teacher. And that is sort of the restricted way. It might be proper in the regular industry world. If you're going back to industry world, then ability to answer proper questions is fine. But now we are in so-called Thailand 4.0. So therefore, we are asking new generation to be innovator. So to train innovator, they have to be able to do based on the active learning that we trying to support here.
Very good indeed.
Let me add some more detail. In order to be innovator, you have to build up at least 3 skills in basic level. The first one is critical thinking. But just only you have the critical thinking, you cannot have the innovations. But you need communication and collaboration. So this room is kind of designed to support that thing. We need students to discuss what they've learned, to share and to collaborate, to come up with their friends with new ideas.
Right, indeed. In the past, many of us would think that scientists or mathematicians or physicists are not communicators. But with this particular technology and new layout, perhaps it can promote that kind of communication to allow physicists or biologists or scientists to also be communicators as well. Meanwhile, you have 3 different types of classroom formats or layouts. There's a smart classroom, interactive classroom, and also the multi-monitor classroom as well. 3 types of functions. Could you explain how they work and what they are?
For this classroom, you have many screen, multi-monitor, as you mentioned. The way we teach, we will provide the student with problem. They can do their critical reading or critical search outside the room. Once they get into the room, they can show and share what they learn on the screen. And if the teacher see that this group is very good and want to show to another group, the teacher can switch or broadcast the evidence, the result from this group to other groups. That's the monitor, so multi-monitor room.
I see.
Right, and as well for other kinds of classroom, it also depends on what kind of equipment that we provide throughout the classroom. In this room, we can refer to as multi-monitor room. In some other room, we also install with additional equipment with a smart board. So therefore, it could be more interactive in the way of teaching, that the student could come up to the screen and then write something up and then could be distributed further. So we refer to that as interactive features of the room. So there could be some rooms that could have multiple features included in a single room.
Could one room be both an interactive classroom with multi-monitors and be a smart classroom, 3 in 1?
Correct.
I
Can
see.
be.
Okay, so it depends on pretty much just a mixture of the different technologies, whether it's a monitor, the interactive board you mentioned, or whether it's a smart classroom. What distinguishes the 3, though, for the 3 different types?
For the smart classroom, if you allow the layout to be more flexible and allow them to be arranged in such a way that encourage the discussion, encourage the collaborations among the team, as well as providing enough equipment. For instance, if you look around here, you will see spaces that could be written. Okay, so you might see them as glass, but actually they are the space that you could write down to encourage discussions. So if you have this kind of facility, then we refer to them as a smart classroom. Now we can have additional equipments added to that to facilitate them further. For instance, you can have more screens, you can have more interactive board. You can have other equipments added in, then you can add more features. But of course, it depends on the need and typical usage of each classes as well.
Right, so the props and the necessities, the basics are provided, but it's up to the professors and teachers.
The
how
outcome
they-
of the class,
and
actually.
the outcome of the class, how they would cater the
Right.
course to the students and such.
Right.
In terms of the size, real quick, is size limited in terms of the smart classroom, the interactive learning space? Is there an unlimited number of students who can join, or is it best to limit this classroom, say, to less than 50, for example? Does size matter?
The size actually have many aspects to it. Okay. For instance, there could be depending on the available space from each school that they have, but we would like to limit into around 50 because bigger than that, we start having problem communicating among other groups because there could be too many groups in one room and it may require too many facilitators in a room. Okay, but too small, then it means that you only restricted yourself into a small meeting room, which would not encourage much of the learning that we expected to see. Okay, so typical usage that we see would be that a student would cram in around 40 to 50 per group. Bigger than that, we start seeing problems. Smaller than that, we also see problems.
I see, so just the right size.
Correct.
Right.
Meanwhile, for the teaching, those were students and interactive learning. Regarding teaching, though, how do teachers have to tweak and modify their curriculum and courses to cater and, you could say, to accommodate such spaces?
Let me say it by the other way around, that we actually need the teaching to change. Okay, so we need to change the way the teacher conduct their class from the regular passive to active learning. So we provide a space to help the teacher changing their way. But of course, the teacher have to realize by themselves first that the way the teaching has to be changed. Okay, we are coming to the so-called outcome-based learning right now. Okay, this is the new era of outcome-based learning. So to achieve certain outcomes, it may not be achievable by just a regular listen and answers. Okay, they
Right.
have to exercise their brain, so to speak. Okay, so therefore we help the teacher as well, as I mentioned before, either through the training, through the grant, through observations, through many form of support by Jula themselves or by the school that sees the point that we have to change. And all those could be measurable through the result from our graduates, that they have more ability, they have more competencies in answering the new world's questions.
And indeed, like the format that the teachers have to apply to such classrooms and such environments are things you mentioned earlier, such as roaming and allowing students to actually engage on their own as well.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
I see. Meanwhile, with the classrooms being located indoors, whether it's the smart classroom, interactive classroom, multi-monitor classroom, can any of this be applied outdoors to promote interactive space, interactive learning outdoors?
Right. So for the term that we intended to use is called active learning space. So it's actually not limited to just a room. Okay? So active learning could occur in any way. It depends on the context of the subject that we would like to tackle.
Right.
For instance, I have seen some subject that they would like to ask students to observe the quality of wireless communications. So in that era, the student has to go around our campus, to go through outdoor, to go through many hallway of the buildings to try to see how the quality of the wireless service changed over the space. So those kind of learning could occur throughout our campus, not limited to just a room. So the key part is actually depend on the context of the active learning. How do you make that active learning occurs? It's not restricted to the spaces. The space that we have here is just one of the possibility to allow the active learning to occur, but it's not limited to just within this room. It can occur anywhere, either indoor or outdoor.
I see. So, and it can be applied and you could say modified and adapted according to various classes,
Exactly.
definitely, and subject. Speaking of which, currently you have about 20 of these particular smart classrooms at Chulalongkorn University. Do you plan in the future to expand that to accommodate more? And what's in the pipelines for the future?
The pipeline is that once we see that this would be considered as the sort of the pioneer of the learning space that we have. Okay, we intend to keep adjusting. Okay, we are not satisfied with what we have right now. We actually also start seeing problem in terms of the real users level, and we adapt on the fly too. In terms of the new space, new spec for the equipments, we change the equipment from place to place, as well as we try to cater to different needs from different faculty as well, because the space that we see around here, it may be suitable for the subject in science or in social science, but once we go into the realm of arts, they may not actually happy with this kind of space because they want more creativity, they want more space to roam around, to go around. The way of their subject are not in terms of the discussion, but rather in terms of expressions. How do we allow the expressions to occur? So those would be the new type of the learning space that we are also try to tackle as well.
Right, with learning and activity and interaction, there's also always changes and modifications in technology to adopt and also to modify the classrooms as you go. Meanwhile, getting a bit technical, can you describe the strategy that's called LILLE, L-I-L-L-E, and how that's applied to this interactive learning space?
Right. For that, we try to pronounce as Lily. Okay? Lily. Okay. It will stand for Learning Innovation for Lifelong Education. Okay. So therefore, that is our motto. And we then once we shorten them as Lily, then we create a symbol that actually resemble the flower lily, and then we trying to use that as a key message throughout the university that we have to transform ourselves through those aspects. We actually have 6 petals of the lilies. Okay, so the 3 petals are trying to tackle 3 aspects inside the university. We refer to that as a campus transformations, including the active learning, which is more of the philosophy of the learning space. This is one of the things that we're trying to do here, as well as the Lily community, which is to train the new facilitator, train the lecturer to become more of the new type of the teacher. The other 3 aspects that we are trying to do is the online presence of the university, including the online lecture, online library, as well as the online course, which are now commonly known as Jula MOOC.
Sounds very cutting edge indeed. Last question, what is the Jula clicker, for example, in the course fill of the learning space, and how is that being applied to encourage this particular new kind of learning, this innovative learning?
All right, so let me answer the first part of the clicker. For the course fill part, I may ask Kun Sanya to help. Okay, for the clicker part, since we are in a bigger space that is more spread around, the way to allow the interaction as well as to collect data from students in certain aspect, because we want to get some interaction to encourage active learning. It's not just one way. Problem-based is one of the way of the active learning only, right? Discussion-based is the other way. There could be many other ways to encourage active thinking from the student. So clicker is just an equipment that help the teacher as well as the system to collect the result from the student. It's not necessarily just could be a hardware. The first version was a hardware based, that we have the sort of like regular remote control that we distributed and could collect result from the student based on their input. Okay, we turn into software based as well. Later on we have to clicker, and lately we also rely on some other platform that could collect data directly either through course wheel, that would be answered later on, as well as some other new technology. But basically that is the tool that we use to utilize for active learning in either this space or different kind of space that we want some feedback from the students.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, for course wheel, as you asked before about the space for the learning, it's not limited in just only just in the classroom, but outside as well. So the LMS or course wheel is learning management system or LMS platform. The main purpose of the LMS is to focus or to help student and teacher connect together outside the room. So that's the course wheel.
I see.
Course wheel is the platform that is designed and developed by a professor here, Chulalongkorn University Faculty of Engineering. Instead of bringing in international or outside platform, we try to develop our own platform. Not only the connectivity that we want to provide, but we also like to have data. Since this is the age or the big data era,
Right.
so we want to do the data analytics. We can bring the behavior, the learning behavior of the student and the learning outcome to improve our class better by using the courseware.
So very good indeed. With all this technology combined and developed and still kind of changing and evolving with the times, definitely something that's effective for today's new thinkers, new age thinkers and innovators. So you need innovation to teach innovators in the future. Thank you very much for all of your insights today. ขอบคุณค่ะ
ครับ